Hey everyone, welcome back to Turn the Key podcast. I'm here with yet again my lovely husband Matthew Plummer, and I am one of your hosts, Cindy.
Hello.
So, it's been a while since we've uploaded, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Yeah, and we bring you some amazing news. Totally unexpected. I mean, it's not like I've been constantly following the news of this or anything, but Netflix adaptation of the Locke and Key comic book is dropping this Friday, or if you're watching this at a later time, it's already dropped.
Which is odd because, of course, as usual, Netflix has put out practically no real hype or any sort of forward-pushing, like, advertisement around.
Almost no ads, and it's disconcerting, but what can you do? The best you can do is just get the word out there and everyone try to watch it so we can hopefully get a season 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we always do, first thing is we will be giving our rating before we dive into this issue. So, why don't you go first? What did you think of this issue as a whole?
Well, I thought it was a decent issue. It's yet another sort of backstory issue, which falls in line with all the issues prior. We're just focusing a lot on character development, and some of the more fantastical elements are still being pushed back to the later volumes.
This issue focuses a lot on
Lesser.
Is that his name? Lessa?
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while, but so we get like a lot of his backstory, damn near his whole like life cycle before it gets to the point where he commits the heinous act against the Locke family, and there's just a lot going on there. So right off the bat, I would give the rating to this book 4 out of 5, just because of how well the bad guy is written, just like his past and his backstory. And I'm pretty sure Joe Hill wasn't thinking like, oh, let me make this character sympathetic, but the way that he's just written and all these events in his life just makes me like, if someone had just like intervened at the right moment, things could have gotten just completely different.
Well, that's the thing, though. Somebody did intervene. In fact, he was...
we were talking about that when we get there, because I have some notes. I have notes.
Oh, you do? Oh, very nice.
Alright, so we jump in with...
Well, in the middle of Bodhi having a sort of dream where he's once again seeing his dead father resurrected, and his father's sort of doing this kind of knock sort of joke thing, and he's trying to also communicate with Bodhi, telling him, the dead that dad would never hurt you, the dead don't hurt you, it's all right, and all that kind of comes out, and Bodhi just kind of suddenly wakes up, and after he wakes up from the dream, we get a transition to Lesser, who, after having escaped from the juvie detention center, he's now apparently hitchhiked on a big rig truck, and he's slowly making his way down, or east. He's slowly making his way east, norther-ish, to, of course, the Locke family.
One thing I wanted to comment on is he, what's his name again?
Lesser?
Lesser, that name. Lesser is getting a ride from a truck driver, and he's giving the truck driver a blowjob as like payment for the ride, and the truck driver comments, it's like, oh, you're amazing, like my wife should get lessons from you, and sort of kind of hints that he's done this before, and the implication of that just kind of makes my skin crawl. Not because like, oh, this is a disgusting thing, but because there is some abuse there, or at least there was some abuse there for this child. And he is a child, you know. Yes, a murderous child, but to some extent he is still a child, and there's some hints here that he has just experienced a lot of gross stuff. And just, ugh.
And then, of course, that leads into him kind of talking about his backstory, talking about he was sort of a child of prominence. He was scoring good grades in school, but he came from a abusive, trashy household. You know, his mom smoked. He had a baby brother, and the dad would just beat up on him for talking smack about him, and he was bullied at school, just bullied everywhere, and it all culminates with him actually beating up and biting a jock who was trying to mess with him, and it got him landed in suspension, and then getting to meet the guidance counselor of the school, which then leads us to Rendell Locke, the head of the Locke family, former head, and we now know what their dad actually did for a living. He was a school guidance counselor, which then explains how Lesser and the other guy both happen to know Rendell and sort of their relationship there, and also why the dad was always so overbearing on the kids. It was because it's like it's his job, and then like a lot of people, the job just kind of evolved into like he never really separated it.
And another thing I wanted to mention, the narrating, how Lesser is narrating his like history with his mom and then his dad, and he doesn't really, like, you see the images, it was not good. His mom was just ignoring him and not listening to him at all. His dad was crazy abusive, but he narrates it in kind of like they were tough parents, but it was easy to manage, as if he's had to tell this same story before to other people, and he's had to kind of like color his family in a brighter shade. To kind of like hide some of the tougher sides of his family so that no one actually knew of the horrors that he was experiencing. And he's speaking it in kind of like a rehearsed way, like he's just used to speaking about it to this way, this detached manner. And that's just like another thing to just like implicate, like, oh, this dude he's been through some stuff.
And then of course that while outside the Rendell Locke's office is where he meets the other guy, I forget his name, who the two of them then would eventually break into the Locke house and kill Rendell and set the family on the course to head back to the Locke house. And we find out that his accomplice is more or less in kind of the same outfit. He's just a troublemaker, just wants to...
Yeah, but Lesser doesn't really dress like a troublemaker. And he mentions how he got into trouble with like a bully.
Yeah.
And Mr. Locke had bailed him out because Mr. Locke saw his intelligence and saw that he had a future like in college if he would just apply himself a little bit. And that's like one of the things that I'll talk to more later on, but that's also kind of an example as to how Mr. Locke just didn't see like all the stuff that this kid had to deal with at home, and he just saw his grades and was like, well, your grades are good, so therefore you must also be doing good, and you must like not have it as tough. And it's just, you don't really get to see the rougher stuff of what people are dealing with. And yeah, it comes back later on. I'll explain more later on.
And then of course you get this nice panel right here where this is Lesser kind of looking across the hall at a couple walking by, and you kind of get the sense that that's a little bit of what Lesser really wants. Is he just wants that normalcy. He wants to be loved, and that then plays into his codependence, where it's like, if I do X, I'll get Y. You know, he talks to the mom. Mom, if I get scores on my SAT, that means we could talk about college, and it kind of, that's what it kind of rolls into. Like he's talking to this other guy, and that leads him to start listening to him, and then you also have him going in with Rendell to talk with him about a potential future, and as we see now, he's now hooked up with the lady in the well, and that's just he's one of those people that's highly intelligent, but he's easily manipulated.
Yeah, I think he's just been beat down by life so much so that despite how intelligent he is, if someone promises him something that, like love or companionship, he'll just jump at the chance to get it, even though it means he has to make really dumb decisions.
Right. And then, of course, at the end of this flashback, we see Tyler storming out of Rendell's office, and we then him trading words with his dad, and another cutaway. We cut back now to present day, where now it's switched to Tyler and his inner voice, and him just still beating himself up over how he talked to his dad and how everything led to where they are now.
And then you have Bodhi walk in, trying to talk to Tyler, trying to ask him about the joke that his dead father told him in his dreams, in his nightmare, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's his thing. This whole issue is just trying to solve the mystery of the joke. What's the punchline?
Right. And of course, Bodhi kind of... It's, again, one of those things where it's like... you find out that Bodhi has this sort of... It's like this nature of him not being obsessed about things and just not just dismissing it as nothing.
Yes.
Because it comes back later when he finds out exactly what the joke is. And
he is very smart. He is smarter than people give him credit for. But the way he tries to solve things and tries to figure things out doesn't come across as smart. It just comes across as like, oh, this kid is just being silly and asking random questions. And that does actually come into play at the end of the issue, which I can't wait to talk about, because it highlights even more of this like kid's just unknown intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And after Tyler just basically tells Bodhi, oh, so the joke is who, like, are you an owl or something? Bodhi gets just irritated. It's like, oh, well, that's not a very cute punchline, and walks out. And then you have Tyler monologuing about how he has to keep a strong face. He can't just walk out. He has to be strong for Bodhi. That kid needs him. And I find it really cute how he thinks he's actually doing a good job at hiding his sadness. Like, anyone with eyes can see that he is not handling his father's death well at all. But he seems to be the only one who thinks that, oh, I'm doing a great job. Oh, Bodhi can see this example of dealing with things properly, and I can be that example. I just thought that was so cute.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, a nice shot of Bodhi just looking up at the shotgun on the rack there.
Tyler looking at the shotgun.
Tyler looking at the shotgun, not Bodhi, as he sort of sits and brood, and it's also kind of interesting. He's kind of surrounded by, a lot of these looks like a bunch of tools and stuff, but yet in this tool shed is also a shotgun, because I guess to him a shotgun is a tool. Mm-hmm. It can fix things.
Yeah. That boy is broken.
And then, of course, we now cut back to the truck stop where we get into the trucker kind of talking to Lesser and explaining to him, yeah, well, you could, this is about as far as I can take you, but you can catch a bus, right? Only problem is, buses take money.
You don't have money.
But I know some guys, and I know a way.
See, you can prostitute yourself to my other truck driver friends, and they will give you money, and that is just so icky and gross.
And again, this kind of plays into, Joe Hill is playing with, like, a lot of stereotypes, and, this is, like, the long road trucker stereotype that, you do a bunch of favors to get truckers to pick you up and hitchhike around and stuff, and so
I can't wait to see how Netflix deals with this.
They don't touch it at all. That is exactly how they will deal with it. Oh my
gosh!
We won't get this scene. Once again, we got my big wet hole, but we're not gonna get this. It's just too many holes, man. Too many holes.
Too many holes with things in them.
And of course we get this kind of plays into another thing. Bodhi, in the beginning, while he was dreaming, he was holding two little vehicles in his hands. One was a big rig truck, and the other was a Greyhound bus. Sort of.
This kid is psychic. I'm calling it.
Maybe. I don't know. He also has of course, what is that?
Transformers.
And what's the tagline for Transformers?
Robots in disguise.
And the other part?
I don't know.
What rhymes with disguise?
I never got that far in the song.
More than meets the eye.
Oh, more than meets the eye.
And of course, the symbol. It could be because of the fact that the company is IDW, and therefore IDW owns the Transformers to reprint the comics. But it could also mean something like, the Decepticons, because it looks more like a Decepticon logo, and that could be alluding to how, there's going to be a character that appears later who changes how they look.
Oh, sweetheart, this is reading way too much into this. This is
look. They could have put anything there on that shirt. They could have put anything there, but they chose that specifically. It's not. There are no coincidences in comics.
Okay, there are no coincidences in comics.
It's there for a reason, and that's what I'm sticking to. And we cut back again to him talking about the trucker and such, and we get another flashback back to Lesser, who is now inside Rendell Locke's office in the past, and Rendell is sort of sitting down. Is sort of washing up in his bathroom. I've never seen a guidance counselor office that had his own personal bathroom.
Not a thing. So. No, I don't care how good he is. I don't care how many awards he's won. Not a thing, bro. Not a thing.
That's I'm assuming that maybe Gabrielle Rodriguez and Joe Hill. It's been a while since they've been in a high school. And I'm assuming that, even though Gabriel Rodriguez spent all this time studying architecture and everything, he clearly just skipped over the part about public schools and
definitely a private bathroom, in a guidance counselor's office.
Yeah, but anyway, it's I guess an excuse for him to be facing away while Lesser kind of is looking around at some of the photos hanging on his wall and commenting, oh, that's the Locke house, and saying, and kind of revealing that Lesser does kind of know about Rendell's family and about where they are.
Tyler talks too much, apparently.
Right, and it then moves to an actual hand-drawn photo or painted photo of the well house, and sort of goes into that a little bit, and as he looks in, he starts to see the woman inside the picture of the well house, starting to form letters in it. And of course, this is a direct reference to It, where the kids were looking at photos from the past, and Pennywise appeared in the photos. Once again, Joe Hill kind of drawing on sort of Stephen King kind of tropes and such. And also the disheartening part here that, while Rendell can help with setting him up with financial aid, he ultimately can't give him a letter of recommendation because...
And that's one of the biggest issues I have with with Tyler's dad. Okay, so as a guidance counselor, I find it very difficult to believe that he doesn't, like, he's never seen a case like Lesser before. A kid who's just having horrible life experiences at the house, but is amazing at school. With children like that, you want to give them as many opportunities to escape as possible. That letter of recommendation could have been the golden freaking tickets. Like, here, you're set, go. And him talking about therapy, you need to get therapy. Do you know how expensive therapy is, first and foremost? And secondly, the only therapy that this kid could probably afford is you. So him having this high and mighty kind of attitude, like, oh, well, you have mental problems, you need a therapist. It's just... Well, he's right and he's correct in his assumptions. The fact that he's targeting it as if Randall is not from a poor, like, lower class situation, tackling as if Randall has the finances to...
You mean Lesser. That Lesser
Lesser has the finances to afford not only to go to therapy, but to get the help and to be on the right track.
I mean, maybe
asinine.
Maybe not. I don't know. I want to think that maybe it has something to do with, this could be a pattern of several different kinds of behavior. Maybe it's like he's been in and out of this office a lot, and maybe this is like Rendell trying to make some kind of a arrangement with him, like, look, if you can agree to take some of these steps and some of these measures that I'm recommending, then we'll get to the recommendation. I don't know.
I would agree with you, except that's not mentioned. He literally, the text, I'm going to try to go based on the text with this one. The text itself says, I'm not giving you the letter of recommendation because I think you're not mentally stable enough for my recommendation. Because he didn't say you're not mentally stable enough for college because I will help you get to college. But specifically for my recommendation, that's where I'm having kind of like... You made the wrong call.
I don't know. I guess maybe it falls back on how Rendell's kind of a hard ass on people. Like he's never gonna go outside of what he thinks needs to be done. He's not gonna give someone a free pass. And given how hard he was on Tyler and probably Kinsey and them, like, it probably makes sense that he's kind of like that. It would make even more sense that he's even more so on students. I mean, if that's how he treats his kids, you can only imagine how much of a ball buster he's probably with some of the kids.
I'm leaning on, like, there's two options. There's option one, the writers needed a reason for Lesser to have a little bit of anger towards Randall, so they reenacted on the letter of recommendation, and that's just what they went with. And then there's option two, that Randall is that dense and incapable of actually seeing people in their situations and dealing with them according to their specific situation. And if it's option two, then that would make him like the worst counselor ever, and that annoys me because soon in the comic you're supposed to start liking this guy and sympathizing with him, but as is, I'm just kind of really pissed off at his decision right now. Like, this is not it, Chief. This is not it.
And of course this then mirrors how while Rendell is telling him
denying him,
he then starts seeing the woman in the well house, first writing down, help me, and then later listen to echoes.
Yeah, willing to accept him. So you have one person denying him and the other one willing to accept him. Mm-hmm. And that's how he falls into the rabbit hole of this. Unfortunately, I really think Randall was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back with this kid. Like, I don't want to blame this kid running around murdering people on Randall's decision, but unfortunately, I really think that Randall's decision to not help him, especially with the recommendation, led into him being open to manipulation from the Echo and the Whale.
And then of course, that then leads to the two of them, Tyler and Lesser, sitting outside the school, waiting to get picked up, and them kind of having a conversation. Tyler explaining that his dad's a hole and can never just make a mistake, and every single mistake or screw up is a moral lesson. And
yeah, I think his dad's just an asshole. Like, it's all just coming back to his dad is kind of an asshole.
Yeah. And then, of course, this damning line. Well, you ever decide to kill your dad, do me a favor and kill mine while you're at it. And, of course, we get a nice shot of, the name of the school, which is William Gaines Academy, which is actually a comic book reference, because William Gaines was the founder of EC Comics,
EC? You say EC?
Yes, originally for Education Comics, then rebranded as Entertainment Comics. They were the people who produced all of the classic 50s horror comics. Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, shock suspense stories. They were basically the iconic horror comics. So, it's a kind of a nod to them, sort of saying, William Gaines, they're the ones that taught everyone else how to do horror comics.
Interesting.
I thought it was a neat little aside.
Something I wanted to also highlight in this image is Lesser asks Tyler, so who are you waiting for? Tyler says, I'm waiting for my dad, he's on a ride home. And then Tyler says, do you need a ride home? He's like, oh no, there's always a bus. Which again, alluding to the fact that this kid has probably gotten a lot of rides from buses and probably had to give a lot of quote-unquote sexual favors to bus drivers, and it's all icky. It's all icky.
Mm-hmm. And then we get a Lesser now in the flashing back to the present. He's getting on a bus that looks identical, mind you, to Bodhi's little toy bus. And yeah,
he killed the truck driver.
Oh, of course he killed the truck driver. Take your seats. Woburn next stop, and they then sort of fade back to another scene here. This time in the the wine cellar of the Locke house with Kinsey and the brother. I don't remember the brother's name.
Their uncle.
Yeah, I mean Rendell's brother. Yeah, their uncle. And again, they're sort of putting away wine, which that'll come up later. All the wine that they have stored, and Bodhi coming in again, sort of asking about the joke and trying to figure out what the joke means. When finally, they kind of come to the conclusion that
the uncle actually says, that the joke might be, where's the thing?
Yeah, that the joke is knock knock. Who's there?
Oh, the uncle says, "What are you, an echo?" And then Kenzie said, "Well, I'm just saying." And then the uncle said, "No, that's the other way the joke goes." So this joke, the uncle remembers it maybe back from his childhood as being like, instead of who as like an owl, is who as in like an echo.
Which again alludes to the fact that the uncle seems to remember more about the Locke house and things from the past.
And something I wanted to highlight is that while Kinsey was helping her uncle put the wine in the wine cellar, she makes a joke about, oh, it's gonna take mom like what, a month to drink through all this wine, and it kind of alludes to her becoming a bit impatient with her mom's drinking, and how Kenzie has slowly started to get better, slowly started to heal from their father's death, and she's getting a bit impatient with how long it's taking her mother to kind of like put herself back together, essentially to stop with all the drinking. And then Bodhi finally figures it out. Yeah. See, smart kid.
Which again, an echo then alludes to the earlier line, listen to the echoes, which was what the woman in the well house was telling Lesser. Further hinting that the woman is definitely not something you should. It's not anything good. That it's a force that will manipulate you and make you do what she wants. And again, we cut back once more to. There's a lot of back and forth.
Yes, there is.
We have flashbacks, we have perspective, and here we get back to Lesser back on the bus, and Lesser just sort of looking around, being paranoid about if anyone recognizes him, and if maybe that woman next to him on the bus has recognized him, and how regardless of what happens, nothing is going to stop him from getting to the Locke house.
He's basically made the decision that the next time she stands to talk to the bus driver, he's just going to, end it all.
Mm-hmm. And then yet another flashback. Now we have a flashback in a flashback with again, just before Rendell is killed. At the beginning of the Lock and Keys issue 1, we get them sort of talking about how Lesser is gonna find the Lovecraft house. He's gonna get those keys because he wants more than anything to get a hold of that Anywhere key. And of course, Rendell explaining that
he doesn't remember a damn thing.
Yeah. And he says, if you're gonna kill me, just go ahead and kill me, and that's pretty much where it ends with Rendell.
Yeah.
Further proving that again, he doesn't know anything, and he's more or less not a direct part of what's going on with the Locke family and everything that happens later.
I just want to drop this while we're here. So I don't know if any of you guys have actually seen the trailer to the TV show, to Netflix's Locke and Key TV show, but something that the trailer kind of alluded to is that the grown-ups, especially Randall, the kid's father, might have remembered some of the events of the Key House and might know some of the situation that's going on there, and it's kind of like guiding them with letters or flashbacks to where they were kids, and he was explaining something about the houses. We haven't seen the show yet, but if that's where they're going, then I am just not going to be very happy, because I love the fact that the comic is essentially about the kids, and this whole thing is just kid focused, and none of this would even be happening without the kids. And even Lesser, I'm sorry, even Lesser, being kind of a kid himself, knows of the key and can comprehend the key, and the keys can technically still work for him, and that makes sense. Anyone who uses the keys or interacts with the keys, mostly in the comics, is a child, and I would kind of be a little bit upset if the TV show makes it to where even some of the adults are getting involved in the hijinks of the keys.
And then, of course, we see in the last panel that yeah, Lesser has once again killed everyone on the bus, and he is still, hellbound to get to that Locke house, and he's just gonna ride the bus the whole way there.
Nope. And then we see a guy in a boat.
Well, no, that's a next issue, dear.
Oh. Next issue, huh?
Yeah, see. So, in any case, that was issue 4 of book 1.
That was indeed issue 4 of book 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, 7 minutes about rating. It gets a 4, mostly, again, just because of the history of Lester and his upbringing, and it's just, there are so many moments in his childhood where if someone just stepped in right there, things would have been different, or right there, things would have been different, and it shows you every single chances that he had to kind of go the other way, and then it shows you the final moment where he just couldn't be turned anymore, where he hit a dead end, and that was it. He was just lost for good, and I don't know, that just kind of, it made my skin shake a little bit in a really good way. Good writing. I'm pretty sure I'm reading way too much into it, and I'm pretty sure, like, Joe Hill was just, I'm just gonna write a sad story, blah, 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 but, like...
that's kind of why it's a tragedy, is that, you know, beyond anything that could have happened, that all the worst things that could have happened did happen to him.
Yeah.
And
where there would have been hope, there was no hope.
And, it's also interesting that, he knows about the keys. And if you're like us and you've read all the issues, there's a lot of, he's specifically after 2 keys that he mentions to the dad. The black key, which we find out later what the black key is, and the anywhere key, which was referenced in an earlier issue when Bodhi was talking to the lady in the well house about a key that can take you anywhere. Yeah. And I'm just trying to remember exactly what he wants the anywhere key for, because it's a very, as the name would imply, it's a key that can take you anywhere. And
where would he go?
But, it's like, he clearly wants it for something.
At this point, I'm trying to, remember if he still has any personal motivation with all of this, aside from just pleasing the woman in the well. Aside from doing what the woman is asking him to do, I'm trying to remember if he has any, personal motivations with all of this left over. And I can't remember. Aside from maybe fixing his face, perhaps. But yeah, I think at this point he's just one track mind. I gotta help the lady. I gotta help her. She helped me. I gotta help her. Yeah,
which again feeds into his codependent nature, which is again what's caused all this. And
all right, so now we get to the part where we talk about what worked and what didn't work. And you can go first.
I would say the biggest thing that didn't work was all the jumping around.
Really?
Well, I mean, you have a flashback inside of a flashback. That's
you do, don't you?
That I think maybe something could have been done about that to make that work a little bit better. And also, the I don't know, the Locke family. I think I don't know. It seems like there was either not enough or too little that was done with them.
Yeah.
And something could have been done with some of that.
Personally, I liked just about everything. This issue was really, really heartbreaking to read, and
all the middle stuff with him, driving with the truck. I don't know. I think maybe they could have cut that and just cut to him getting on a bus, just killing everybody, and just had that all be.
I think that was necessary. Okay, so what worked?
Well, what worked, Lesser's backstory was pretty decent. Again, we do sort of the montage kind of thing, which again, he's, Joe and Gabrielle are kind of that, and Gabrielle, that's kind of what they've been doing as far as their how they dispense a lot of information and time passing.
But okay, so for me, I kind of liked everything. It was good.
Oh, kind of like everything. Very, very insightful.
Yes, I kind of really liked everything.
You really went over this with a fine-tooth comb.
I did, like, making sure I get every little detail and make sure I love every little detail, except for one. What didn't work was just Randall. Randall. Tyler's dad is just. Again, like I said, either the writers needed a reason for...
Clearly, they just didn't know a lot about guidance counselors. They didn't. They apparently think they get their own bathroom, and that they can just pick and choose when to not care about their own. Like, he cares enough to make sure the kid doesn't get expelled from school, but yet he doesn't care enough to get him a recommendation to a college.
That was what I was also going to say. Even if he couldn't write one, as a guidance counselor, he would have made sure to find someone else that could write Lesser a recommendation. Because that's also what my guidance counselor did as well.
He can't let his name get besmirched. They'll take away his private bathroom, all right?
Point is, he knows Lesser is intelligent. He knows Lesser can do really good at college, and he's willing to fight for him to get those financial support to do so. He just won't find someone else to write the letter. I don't know. That was just iffy. It was either bad writing or just a really shitty character. And considering what we've heard from Tyler, he's probably just a really shitty dad, or a really shitty person, a really shitty character. It's probably more towards that.
So you're saying it's a guidance counselor who's a shitty dad, which is a very interesting kind of dichotomy there.
Yeah. But yeah, aside from the shitty dad situation, I really did like this. I liked Randall, I liked everything, and it all just basically worked. So then, last part, will you be continuing on to the next issue?
No, yeah, I gotta see when he finally gets to the Locke house, and also next issue, I think we'll get a lot more of the Locke family, which is, my favorite parts.
Yeah, I'll be continuing, obviously. Alright, guys, it's been fun, but we gotta head out. We'll see you in the next video.
Thank you for stopping by again for the Turn the Key podcast.